Hello Brain Shakers, welcome to the Brain Shakers Academy. In today's session we're going to be continuing looking at the process of labor, and as we look at the process of labor we are going to be looking and understanding the onset of labor or the initiation process of labor. Now there are a number of factors that come into play for labor to happen, and these are obviously branched into hormonal factors and also mechanical factors. So let's get into today's session and understand how then labor happens. So we have mentioned already that we have what we're going to refer to as hormonal factors. So factor number one, we're going to be looking at the hormonal factors. And then number two, we have what we are going to refer to as the mechanical factors. So these are the two main branches or classifications for the initiation process of the process of labor. Now let's quickly look at the hormonal factors and see how hormones do play key role in the onset of labor. So from our understanding in the videos that we have done and in the other sessions, and if you haven't taken a look at those videos, we have looked at the process of menstruation and then fertilization and then the physiology of pregnancy, and you can find those videos on one of my YouTube channels, which is the Brain Shakers Academy. And we did make mention that the hormone of pregnancy in this instance is going to be progesterone. Now progesterone is going to be in high amounts in order to allow the pregnancy to then proceed until one reaches 10. So it is considered the pregnancy hormone. So it is allowing the pregnancy to continue by not allowing the myometrium to then contract. It means that it stops all manner of contraction so that the pregnancy will then be allowed to proceed until 10. Now, when you get to the stage towards the end of pregnancy, the levels of progesterone then are going to decline. So it means that there's going to be a reduction in the progesterone. Okay, so the progesterone levels then are going to reduce. Now, the reduction in the progesterone levels will mean that there's going to be an increase in the estrogen levels. Okay, now when the estrogen comes into play, because of this rise in estrogen, the estrogen now is going to bring about two factors. So number one, it is going to affect the uterus. And how does it do that? It is going to affect the uterus by making the uterus express what we call oxytocin receptors, meaning that it is going to put receivers that are waiting for that oxytocin hormone to come and bind and then start the process of contraction. So the estrogen is going to make sure that within the uterus then expresses those oxytocin receptors. And at the same time, it is going to stimulate the production of prostaglandins. Okay, now prostaglandins are known to be the ones that are responsible for the onset of labor, because at some stage you will see how they then potentiate the effect of estrogen on the myometrium. Now the estrogen is going to stimulate, because it's already acting on the uterus, it will stimulate the decidual cells, the lysosomes, and the myometrial cells to then produce these prostaglandins. Now, when the prostaglandins themselves have then been produced, what prostaglandins are going to do is, number one, the prostaglandins are going to induce the production of enzymes, and one important enzyme that they are going to lead to or facilitate its production is an enzyme that we are going to call the collagenase enzyme. Now, this collagenase enzyme just basically means from collagen that it is going to obviously be working on collagen. Now, where is it going to be working on the collagen? So you are going to find that you have the cervix down there. So this collagenase enzyme comes now and digests the collagen that is around the cervix. And as it does that, it means that it is softening the cervix and preparing the cervix for the process then of effacement and then dilatation. It means that the process of labor now will be starting. So the softening of that cervix will be happening as a result of collagen endogenous, which is obviously coming as a result of the prostaglandins that have been produced by the lysosome, decidual, and myometrial cells. Now, any stimulation to the cervix here is going to facilitate an impulse that is going to then be sent to the hypothalamus. And once it is sent to the hypothalamus now is going to affect or send an impulse to the control center, that is to the pituitary gland, and that is the posterior aspect or the neural hypophysis, where you have the oxytocin. So I have done another video on the hormones and how they play key role in regulating the menstrual cycle, and you can find that on my YouTube channel, which is the Brain Shakers Academy. And don't forget to subscribe if you have not subscribed yet. So within the cervix here, we're talking about the collagen here that has then digested that collagen and has sent an impulse to the hypothalamus to produce oxytocin. We did make mention that the estrogen will cause the uterus to express its oxytocic receptors in readiness for the oxytocin that is going to then be produced. So you have receptors there waiting for the oxytocin to come, and when the oxytocin comes, it is going to then bind to these receptors, and then the process of uterine contraction is obviously going to start. Now, as there is going to be a binding of this oxytocin to the oxytocic receptors, what is going to happen is that these prostaglandins, again, they will come into play. Why? Because they have to potentiate or allow the combining of the oxytocic receptors and oxytocin itself, and then potentiate that by allowing the movement of calcium into the cells so that a contraction can actually happen. So do check out also on my YouTube channel for a video on where I look at muscular contraction and the effect of calcium when calcium gets into the cells. So this is then going to start the whole process of uterine contraction. So it's an interplay of these hormones that then generate that action potential for the muscles within the uterus to begin the process of contraction. So that is the hormonal way of bringing about the onset of labor. Now let's look at the mechanical process of labor. So we have the mechanical factors that are at play. Now, as we look at mechanical factors, you will also understand that any pressure or over distension of the uterus is going to facilitate or allow pressure onto the cervix. And we have already mentioned that any pressure that is going to be exerted on the cervix or any stimulation to the cervical canal then is going to allow an impulse to get to the hypothalamus so that oxytocin can then be produced. And that oxytocin that is then produced would then come to the uterine myometrium there, or the muscle layer, and then bind to the oxytocic receptors, and then the process of contractions is going to begin. And this is why when you are given what we call a stretch and a sweep, somewhere if you are going beyond 40 weeks, so you may actually undergo what is referred to as a stretch and sweep. This is a process of getting through to the cervix. So this is the cervix, and then you have a bag of membranes there. So you have an internal os here, and then you have the external os of the cervix. So the stretch and sweep is basically getting into the cervix and trying to sweep and separate the bag of waters from the cervix. And that stimulation process now is what is going to then initiate an impulse to then allow the process of oxytocin to then be produced, and that oxytocin will come and bind to the oxytocic receptors. So you have prostaglandins then coming into play to then potentiate the effect of the oxytocin and the oxytocic receptors are binding, and then the whole process of labor is going to then start. So basically that is the onset of labor, or how labor then begins to become what it is. And so if you did find this particular video helpful and insightful in understanding the onset or initiation of the process of labor, do not hesitate to give me a thumbs up. Do not hesitate as well to share the video as much as possible. Drop me comments in the comments section, and if you have not yet subscribed, do subscribe to the YouTube channel, which is the Brain Shakers Academy. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.